President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government is working to get South Africa removed from the grey list. The country was flagged by the Financial Action Task Force last month. Ramaphosa was dealing with the issue while responding to questions in the National Council of Provinces in Cape Town this afternoon.
A period of time is needed to demonstrate improvements on the outstanding deficiencies that have been identified. It is estimated that the country needs at least 6 months to demonstrate whether the recent amendments adopted by Parliament in December are effective. It is our hope that South Africa will make sufficient and good progress by next year to be removed from the grey list. It is our intention that we should be removed from that grey list, and we are working very hard towards that end.
Speak more about South Africa's greylisting and President Ramaphosa's response then to the issue in the National Council of Provinces. Today we're joined tonight by Professor Biekpe from the University of Cape Town. Professor, grateful for your time tonight. So the President's saying they're optimistic as government that there should be good progress made in the next year or so. Do you think that is enough time to get us removed off the grey list?
It will require, I think, in my opinion, a bit longer. Grey listing requirements are not just more or less recommendations from government. It's on implementation. Anybody that joins this organization get the rules book, what to do and what not to do. You can say, look, as a government, we've set up this committee to do this, but then the bottom line is always, have you done it? So it's on implementation as opposed to just government recommendation or setting up committees. So I think maybe we look around 2 years. I could be wrong, but from my experience dealing with other countries that were in it, it always takes about 2 years because they have to come back and then actually check to see whether some of the things that they agreed on and they were going to implement, whether they've managed to succeed, or at least done it in a way that the country can then be re-examined and then taken off the grey listing list.
And while the FATF did go ahead with grey listing South Africa last month, it did say that most of what had been flagged in previous reports had been dealt with. And President Ramaphosa today again said that they've come down to about a list of 8 key focus points. Which of those are most urgent?
The 8 that are left are mainly legal and the financial kind of this. And you look at me. If you take, for instance, if there is somebody that's been accused of money laundering, for instance, or an organization involved in that, and then it takes longer. It takes sometimes years to bring the person to court. So you, in a way, don't instill discipline on people to look and say, hang on here, if you do this in South Africa, the law is there, you'll be arrested, you'll be in prison. It takes too long. And also, if you remember, the first review process was around 2019, with the report then released, I think, around 2021. So that also covers a period where the government was struggling with the capture of the state. So that also opened up a lot of things that international organizations were not aware. So it's a luck thing, it's a look-back thing. So these things are going to be, they are implementable and they will be implemented, but that takes time. The 8 that are left, when I look at them, they are more legal and then financial constraints that need to remedy them to ensure that the work that the government promised they're going to do are actually implemented.
And while the President was answering questions around the grey listing of South Africa, there was a report aired internationally today by Al Jazeera talking about how several officials from some of the country's biggest banks have apparently, allegedly, I should say, been helping a gold smuggling gang to launder millions of dollars of dirty cash in exchange for regular bribes. I mean, the man interviewed in the interview, for example, says they had boxes full of stamps and they worked allegedly with people at Standard Bank, ABSA, and even SASFIN. All of those institutions have, of course, said that they're going to take action against any people who may have found to have been involved. But that speaks to just how widespread this sort of crime has been.
That's the point. That's the thing. You know, I mean, when these things do happen, but then if these institutions are not, they are not like every day they are in your country checking to see everything is done. But when they come that way, and that's the impact that grey listing actually does. is when it's uncovered and people's perception change, investors' perception change. They don't want to come to the country again because something has just been found out. I'm not surprised this is happening, but I must just add that our banks are very good. But of course, the criminals are always ahead of the banks. I mean, you can only have good people rich as much, so long as information is not available, they wouldn't get that. But the banks in South Africa are considered some of the best in the world. But it's just that criminals sometimes are ahead of us, not only in South Africa, around the world, whether in Asia or even Eastern Europe. So it's a big problem around the world. But I think our challenge was just the fact that we had some major incidents between the period that we reviewed, and a lot of things came out. The State Culture Report revealed so many things. So in a way, one can look back and say, well, the government couldn't have done anything. Now that they are out, let's deal with it. So in a way, I was talking to a colleague that this is probably a good idea that at least the country re-examine where we are, what went wrong, and then try and change that. But I mean, the things that are supposed to change are not that difficult. I think the government will be able to do it, but not in 1 year. It requires quite a lot of changes.
So in the interim then, how exposed, how vulnerable are South African systems to exploitation by money launderers and people who are funding terrorist activities?
We are like all countries in the continent. I mean, I can safely say the continent. Morocco was also greylisted, but they are now out again. But Morocco is not a country you classify as a country that is actually dealing with money laundering. But some things came out there and they were put in the grey list. So every country is vulnerable. The banking systems are always vulnerable. What happened in the U.S., I mean, who would have thought so? So there's always that information that is lagged. When I say lack information, something happens, but it's not discovered. Then when it's discovered, it creates a hype, a very, very important hype, and then people change their behavior, their investment decisions. So it's in that context we are, but we are a very lucky country where we have rules and regulations within the banking sector, a very tight monetary policies around banks, financing, and also the money that comes in. One of the few African countries where you cannot just send money to anybody you want. Mm-hmm. But these were, as I mentioned, things that happened that actually put us on the back footing, and that created this thing. If not, South Africa will be the last country where one would think that is going to be greylisted. But I'm confident that things will change once the government has also addressed these 8 challenges that the organization recommended.
Professor Nicholas Biekpe with the University of Cape Town. Good to speak to you, sir. Thank you.